Good morning. It's Monday, April 27th, and here we are again. So, on Wednesday, you guys are going to have a quiz on irony and point of view. So, today, for this video, you don't have to do anything, you just have to watch, okay? So, this is like a think aloud. So, I'm going to show you my thought process going through a couple of examples for those of you that are still struggling. So, maybe it'll kind of help you, okay? So, just listen, pay attention. And yeah. All right, so we have two different ones we're going to work on here. And we're going to make sure that we are kind of really thinking about these things. So for the first one, I'm going to look down at the questions first. And I know that I'm just looking for irony. Okay, so we're just trying to identify what kind of irony and how I know that. All right, so when Mr. Goodenwell saw his baby boy Vince for the first time, he swore he'd do anything to protect the little guy. This was easy at first. All Vince did was lie in a pillow and drink milk. But soon, little Vince grew bigger, and then he started walking. Now, little Vince got into everything. Vince's curiosity was becoming a serious threat to himself. So Mr. Goodenwell went to the store and bought $150, or not 150,000, worth of equipment to childproof his home. He put covers on the outlets, bumpers on the table corners, and a sliding lock on the toilet lid. As Mr. Goodenwell was adjusting the covers on the doorknobs, Vince pulled a cap off an outlet and chewed on it. It got lodged in his throat and Vince began to choke. Mr. Goodenwell found him just in time. So I'm going to actually go in and highlight these or bold these last two lines. Okay, so basically what we have here is a guy who wants to protect his kid, and as he's installing all of these things, the kid takes one of the items, which that's a thing. Like the outlet covers are one of the items he put in to protect the kid, and the kid actually chokes on that. So the irony there is that he is choking on something that was made for his protection. So it's the opposite of what we would think. So I know it's situational irony, okay? And so for how do I know, I'm going to write, I know this because Vince choked on an outlet cover. The outlet cover meant to be was meant to protect him from the outlet. Instead, it became his item. Okay? So the thing that was meant to protect him became the dangerous thing, making that situational irony. Okay? So this next one, we're going to talk about point of view and we're going to talk about irony. Okay? You guys have been doing fairly decent with irony. Point of view, we're still really struggling with. So make sure that you're paying attention very carefully. All right? Making friends isn't easy. Ask Juan Guerrero, who moved to New High School High, what a terrible name, 3 months ago, but he still eats lunch by himself. Nobody picks on him really, but they pretty much ignore him, at least since the incident. You see, Juan had his chance. We almost adopted him into our crew, the skaters, after Juan said he could skate. Oh yeah? Asked my boy Romeo. Well, where's your board? Juan replied shakily. My mom ran it over with her car, but I do flips and grinds and all that stuff. Romeo didn't believe him. Why don't you use my board? Show me one of those flips, Romeo challenged. Juan gulped and grabbed the board. Okay, he replied. When you see a good skater on TV or in a video game, skateboarding may look easy. In real life, though, just moving without falling, let alone doing any tricks, takes a lot of practice. So I wasn't too surprised when Juan landed flat on his can before he even made it across a single sidewalk square. Wow, what an awesome flip, Tony Hawk. You'll have to teach me that, Romeo sneered. Now Juan eats lunch alone. So we're looking for point of view first. And so first off, right off the bat, we can rule out second person point of view. We know it's not second person because I, the reader, am not a character in it. It's not saying like you pick up the skateboard and you try to do a flip, but then you fail. Okay. So it's not second person. Okay. So then we want to look and see what kind of pronouns is being used. Like Juan is not telling us the story, but then we have this line here. So I'm going to bold that. We have this line here, and then we have this one down here. So this is showing us, he says, we almost adopted him into our crew, my boy Romeo, and I wasn't too surprised. So we have Juan and we have Romeo, but neither of those people is telling us the story, which would make us think like, oh, maybe it's third person, but it is not. Okay? There is a different character in the story who is friends with Romeo, who is a member of this little gang, who watched everything, and he's telling us the story. So it is in first person. Okay? Now we want to look at this one. This is a big part that we're kind of missing. So how might the story be different if it were told from Juan's perspective? So if he was the one telling us. So this kind of requires you to think a little out of the box, right? It's not going to be in the text. You have to think about it. So based on what we know, Juan is a new kid. So first off, would probably know a little more about Juan and why he moved. And then we would see this whole situation from a different point of view, right? So we would get to know, or we would get to see Juan's embarrassment, right? Because otherwise, like, we just see everybody kind of thinking that he's like a phony and a failure and being all lonely. But if we saw it from Juan's point of view, we would get to see his embarrassment. We would know about his loneliness, and we would just get to see more of his thoughts. Right? We would get to just be in his head more. We would know why he did the things he did. We would know why he thought it was necessary to like fake it all. And then we would know how he feels about the situation after the fact, right? So a big part of this point of view and the perspective thing is us kind of being able to see how these different characters tell the story and their different thoughts on it, right? And so even though in this one we don't know what Juan is thinking, we can make an inference that he's probably feeling very embarrassed and feeling very lonely because he has no friends after these 3 months because of something he did, because he faked, right? So that's just kind of like those inferences that we can do. All right, and so what kind of irony is in the text? So our piece of irony is towards the bottom, right? At the beginning, nothing's really ironic. It's pretty straightforward. It's just saying, like, here's this kid. He has no friends. He lied to us about being able to skateboard. But then, after he falls, we have this line right here. So, wow, what an awesome flip, Tony Hawk. You have to teach me that, Romeo sneered. Okay, and this is after he fell. So I know that he is not serious and that he's being sarcastic. So it's verbal irony, right? So I know this because Juan had just fallen. So there's no way that Romeo was actually impressed. And then, hopefully you guys know this. I mean, I'm assuming you do. And then another piece of it is when he calls him Tony Hawk. So he also calls him Tony Hawk, who is an amazing, famous, incredible skateboarder. Obviously, Juan is not that. Okay, so let me just read this again. So we know this because Juan had just fallen, so there's no way that Romeo was actually impressed, like, wow, teach me how to fall. And he also calls him Tony Hawk, and Tony Hawk is like the god of skateboarding. So clearly he is not like that if he stepped on the skateboard and immediately fell. Okay. So if you were struggling, hopefully this helped. Sometimes it just talking it out is kind of a little bit of support for that. There is an independent practice for you to complete today. There is not an exit slip, so you do need to do the independent practice no matter what. Again, for those of you struggling with your phone, feel free to just write your answers and then take a picture and send it to me. All right, let me know if you have any questions.